My friends, welcome. Emergency energy austerity measures are spreading rapidly across Europe right now. Things are moving quite quickly, and even as Slovenia just an hour ago instituted limits on the amount of fuel that individuals can purchase, we're getting reports from barge captains and other folks in logistics and on the ground saying that they're not being allowed to deliver fuels onto the continent. So someone is deliberately withholding energy supplies even as they scream about the shortages and, hey, we need to institute emergency measures and take control over all these things. The plans that are being enacted are drafted years ago by the very groups within these governments that were tasked with the green energy transition. We'll take a look at some of these. They are literally the decarbonization groups, the climate change working groups. It is their plans that are now, and even they are in charge of the implementation of these plans in response to this energy crisis. It's one and the same, this agenda. So I want to take a look at and the UN is also quite open about this. So we'll take a look at all that. I'm Christian, and you can find me at unshadowed.org. And of course, this had to happen. It's not a surprise that the climate change people had to do something to keep their agenda running. As No Tricks Zone reported recently, there's just no support for climate change anymore. People are no longer afraid of global warming. They have bigger problems right now. A survey had shown that the majority of Germans just said, put it away, forget about it until later. And so when faced with that reality, with that lack of public support, they had to cause a crisis, and that's what we're witnessing now. The UN climate chief just the other day, in fact, said, hey, this Iran war, it's going to be great. It's going to cause us to get off, finally, these fossil fuels. All this stuff we've been trying to do for years and couldn't get the public to support. Now we're going to shove it down your throats. So in Brussels, the disruption to energy markets caused by the war is a lesson for you on the risks of relying on fossil fuels, which should drive governments to wean their economies off oil and gas faster, according to the UN Climate Secretary. Quote, if ever there is a moment to accelerate the energy transition and break your dependencies, this is that time. This is pretty much an admission that what's going on right now absolutely serves their goals. But let's step back, and I want to take a look at this report. This was sent to me by a gentleman named Dirk, who's one of my Patreon supporters. Thank you for that, Dirk. And it is a Dutch barge captain who has tweeted out quite critically saying, how are there fuel shortages? Here I am. I loaded up on biogas just a few days ago, coming from Amsterdam, and then we sat here for 10 days waiting to unload. Then we got redirected to a new destination. We got there last Wednesday, and now we've been sitting there and not unloading our product. How are you driving up the price of biodiesel even higher? By not allowing deliveries onto the continent. And, he continues, we are not the only ones stuck here, as storage for nearly a fortnight. That would be 20 days. So there's plenty of supply sitting there, apparently on multiple barges full of biodiesel and other energy sources, but they're not being allowed to unload, even as you're not allowed to buy more fuel, right? Are you seeing what's happening here? It looks pretty clear, and so too does the situation in Australia. I had mentioned about a week ago when ABC News was talking about the fuel shortages and rationing that was going on in West Australia and New South Wales. There was one report that had a very telling interview with this gentleman, the local manager of a bulk fuel supplier. He told ABC he had been directed, so this is the guy that sells gas to the gas stations, and he was directed to only deliver 50% of what the gas stations had actually requested, which basically ensures that there will be shortages. So if they've ordered 20,000, I'm only giving them 10,000, but it's been directed down that way. And if we don't adhere to this strictly, we will be cut off completely, and that's a worst case scenario. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up again is that because one of my viewers sent to me this comment saying that they've been creating panic buying in Australia right from the outset. Every media outlet got on the TV and told us to go buy fuel before prices go up. This makes no sense. Then they blamed people for panic buying. Talk about creating the problem. Problem, reaction, solution. And she nails it. That's exactly the Hegelian dialectic they're using here. This is an engineered crisis. Of course, when you limit the amount of gas that when BP tells their suppliers, you're not allowed to give this to the gas stations anymore, even as the media gets on TV and tells everyone go buy gas, what's going to happen, right? Naturally, what will happen is that they're going to run out of gas, and that is exactly why the premier, Chris Minns, then got on TV and said, "Oh man, looks like we're running out of gas." Right? It's so clear as the nose on my face that this is being engineered in order to implement the rationing, which New South Wales, to be specific, the state, not the entirety of Australia, has announced they're working on. Between that series of steps, guaranteeing an outcome of shortages that they're then pointing at and saying, well, looks like we need rationing, and Europe not even allowing those deliveries, it is abundantly clear that this is an engineered situation, a scripted crisis created because no one was afraid of global warming anymore in order to roll out the technocratic control over energy usage, the decarbonization, the deindustrialization, the total control. That's what's going on right now. If you have information that you'd like to share, because the more we hear from the ground, the clearer this picture gets. So send me an email, iceagefarmer@protonmail.com. And let's draw that picture. All right, let's now talk about the countries and the measures they're taking. We already mentioned that Slovenia is limiting, starting today, fuel purchases. Greece put price caps on food and energy prices. Hungary as well, the Orban administration capped the liter of fuel, and that price-capped fuel can only be sold to vehicles with Hungarian license plates. So making sure that the domestic supply is available, not to foreigners. France also implementing price caps. Slovakia is setting higher diesel prices for foreigners and keeping prices lower for their own citizens, but they're also limiting how much their citizens are allowed to use. Portugal has also put price caps on the energy prices there. They're not yet going into effect, but, quote, if this limit would hit, government would be able to take measures, emergency measures, including setting the price of electricity lower than the cost of production. The government would cover the difference, and he didn't specify how, but never mind that. We'll figure it out later. And then, of course, these price limits this is important, would be accompanied by energy efficiency measures, such as requiring households to cut consumption to 80% of last year's levels. So you have to eliminate 20%. You have to drop 1/5 of whatever it is you do at home. Gotta stop. It's a requirement once these thresholds are hit, and we're on our way rapidly. In Denmark, meanwhile, they're literally begging, please, please, please stop driving, and citing, if you can stop driving, that will help stretch our reserves so that they last longer. Remember, I said yesterday, the energy reserves that these countries are citing will be used as the throttle for how much they clamp down on people's rights and how far these lockdowns going. In the UK, they're talking about lowering speed limits, just as the IEA had recommended only a few days ago. As they had recommended only a few days ago, along with working from home and a number of other measures. The UK also is telling pubs that they should stop their refrigerators at night, over the objections of pub owners who say, hey, we can't do that, the beer will taste terrible. But so they're running the gamut, trying to figure out how to save energy. And I surfaced this report out of the UK, which is called the National Emergency Plan for Fuel. It's produced by none other than the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. This is why I said at the beginning of the video, it is the people, the climate change, global warming, energy, decarbonization, it's those same people that created the plans that are now being enacted. And in fact, we can even read from the UK, it will be, the decision to activate these measures can only be taken at a national level and would be led by the Net Zero Department. So it literally is the same people who were doing climate change 20 years ago and authoring these plans who are now executing these agendas and in charge of doing it. It's also worth calling out, and bear in mind, this is a 2024 report that the UK has, so for years, has been planning, if they need to, control supply and demand These would be activated in the event of a severe national fuel supply shortage, like the one that is happening right now, that they'll be prioritizing emergency services and public transport, leaving households and companies out to dry. And then even they call out explicitly, they'll be rationing, restricting the sale of road fuels at retail filling stations, and even limiting the hours in which road fuels can be sold. So it's been baked into their plans, drawn up by the climate change people for years now. And now it's rolling out across Europe, just as we've seen it over the past days, rolling out in Asia. And some of the effects of that are already becoming apparent. Here from the Mountaineer, we're seeing that entire fleets of fishermen in Thailand are just no longer fishing because they can't get diesel fuel for their boats. So it's not just the farms aspect of food production that's affected by this energy crisis. It's the fishing. Energy is in everything, right? It's everything. This is why this is necessarily going to translate into a food crisis, which they will use to tighten their control even further. So start taking steps today to make sure that you have a supply of food, that you're growing your own food in natural ways. Get some quail or rabbits or something that you can create protein in a very small space. They're a delight to have, but also, when you think about how this is going to happen, protein and fats are always going to be at a premium, right? Those are the ones that are hardest to store and hardest to produce. So start there and build up the supplies for yourself, your family, your community, and do spread the word. Help me by sharing this video or making your own. Again, the more data we get from folks on the ground and the more people that are aware of this, the better we'll be able to weather the storm and stop these technocrats from instituting their ridiculous agendas. So, thanks for watching. You can find this report and all my reports, and we'll be keeping an eye on how this is rapidly rolling out at unshadowed.org. If you appreciate this broadcast, if you value this information, please do help me keep it running. You can do that by subscribing with some support at unshadowed.org or by finding me at patreon.com/iceagefarmer. And I very much appreciate your help. Thank you. All right. Thanks for watching and be well.